Well, boys, excuse me, it's finally done. I'm picking and poking away at it, and the 520 swept front axle is complete. Put my hubcaps on. I gotta align the front end. You can tell that it probably looks straight, but it's not. Toes in a little bit. Yeah, it's quite a bit of work. I think it's totally worth it. I'll just give you a quick rundown of what's involved because I couldn't really find much information, believe it or not, on this. Uh, there's your old parts right there. So you do have to replace all that if you're doing just the swept front axle from like a mid to late 80s machine before reduction steering. You can just do a direct swap. Everything will swap over onto your existing fan gear and shaft. But this is off of a later one with reduction steering, which means fan gear has to go, that steering block has to go, and the steering shaft. It's too short and the gear is different. First thing I did, I removed the front axle, and to get that fan gear out, by fan gear I mean that red one right there on top, you are going to have to lift that engine up. I didn't take it off completely. I took those 4 bolts out, and then I put a couple 2x4s on it and lifted it up and out of the way. Of course, you're going to have to take your clutch off, your PTO lever, all that fun stuff. I did take this belt cover off to gain access, so also you can see better when you put that reduction block in. It's under there, so it definitely helps take this off. I had to take my foot pads off because obviously I made those, and as you can see I forgot to put one of those brackets on. You have to take the battery out, and remove your steering wheel shaft as well. It is longer, as you can see, but I haven't decided whether I'm going to cut it and re-drill a hole for that roll pin, or if I'm just going to get some sort of, make an extension for that. I don't know yet. But it's all put back together. I test drove it. Everything works. Obviously the engine's hooked back up. The grounds and all that stuff. One thing I did do differently that I will share. As you can see, I have not put the tools away yet. There is a roll pin on this steering shaft. Of course, this thing's acting Chinese piece of shit. Alright, you can see that. This thing sucks. Alright, you see that silver shiny, damn camera won't focus, collar right there. That's a shaft lock, or it's got a bunch of different names. That holds that bushing. That bushing goes through the steel and on your tower here, and there's some washers in there, some thrust washers and shims, brass shims, and kind of alignment washers. Oh, now you can see. You can see now, and that's what keeps your steering shaft in place and eliminates play. So there was a roll pin. Now I was gonna have to re-drill that out, but instead I used that come on, focus. I used that shaft lock instead. It does the same thing. It's adjustable. It gets it nice and tight, and it kind of eliminated the need for shims because I got that really tight. I put the shims in, loaded it with grease, and the steering is nice and tight. It feels good. I did leave that loose so that I could pull the steering wheel up and down because it's kind of a pain, aligning your wheels. Everything moves, so you want to be able to move your wheels to the left and right, get your fan gear in there lined up with your, it'll be easier for me to show you on this. That goes like that. Essentially, now on the 520, the fan gear, the gears are on top, up here, and this is it's bigger on these. On the 520, the gear is smaller. That shaft diameter is smaller, so you can't use any of this stuff. But by leaving the shaft so you can move it up and down, you move this fan gear to the left and right, and makes your life a little easier. So once I had it where I wanted it, I put that shaft lock up and I tightened it down. It's the shaft. This diameter is the same. It's 3/4. Heavy stuff for just a garden tractor. They weren't messing around. So you can see this hole right there. That's the hole for your roll pin, and right in here goes through the dashboard. Now, obviously the 520 dash is different. You have your gauges, the hood's different, so that's why I would have had to have drilled a hole to make it work with this. So instead of drilling this hole, that's why I used that shaft lock instead of ruining trying to get that perfect, dealing with shims. I don't have to mess with any of that, and I think I would use that anyway because it's adjustable. This is fixed. They're a couple bucks in any decent hardware store. That would be my only tip to add. So, you do have to remove the engine. You have to take the battery out. I would say soak everything in. I have Croyle over there. That's what I used. WD-40, wherever. Let that soak because everybody says, that roll pin is really hard to get off. Mine came out real easy. Everything came apart easy. The other thing I would say is once you get that roll pin out, you should probably take the steering wheel off first before you take your axle and your front tires, because it definitely helps. Once you get that roll pin out, this is going to be rust welded on a little bit because the shaft is steel. The steering wheel is a good hard plastic, but there's a steel boss that is annealed. I don't know if that would be the right word, or not annealed. It's embedded inside this hard plastic, and it sticks. But if you leave the axle and your front wheels on, take your wheel, turn it to the left and right, and you can unscrew it off. I had to use vice grips to do it, so I would definitely leave that on. Take the steering wheel off first. But in review, the rest of it's pretty straightforward. If you don't have a manual, it definitely comes in handy. I didn't have a 520 manual, but I had my old one for 88 3 and 400 series. And pages and stuff. Transmission. Obviously this was great because all this has to come apart. This is where your reduction steering now resides, and some people have to drill 2 holes. So the back goes in those 2 holes, and then the front goes in 2 holes right here. These are the 2 typically you have to drill. I didn't have to. Mine's a 96. But and that's the roll pin I was telling you about. all that stuff. I eliminated all that. You know, and then there's this locking pin right here, the pivot pin. That needs to come out, and on mine was real greasy. I didn't realize there is a locking C-clip on there. Just knock that out with a screwdriver. And this kind of pivot point for your steering shaft goes in there. It's just in a bushing. All that stuff comes out. Basically, everything on here comes off. You know, all has to come out. Lift the engine out, lift your battery out, and put all the new stuff in. Your 520 parts. But those are all the tools you need right there too. It's not perfect, like I said. I need to adjust it, and now I'm going to need to extend my plow and my adjustment lever for my plow, because it will hit those wheels. At least that's what I'm told. It will hit those front wheels on the 520 front axle. So that's something I'm going to have to deal with, because it's going to snow soon at some point. But otherwise, I'm real happy with it. I love the way the tractor sits. It sits a little higher. You know, those are the old tires over there. They were small. Even, you know, the 312s had the little wheels. And then the 400 series had the bigger wheels, and the 500s had these. You know, with the full bearings and all the goodies. I mean, eventually it would be great to find a Johnson or a quick way loader for this. So I just got to be patient. But in the meantime, it's got mower duty and pulling stuff and pushing stuff, and works real well in that capacity. Real strong tractor. But you know, basically it's pretty close to a 520 now. We got the front end, we got the reduction steering, got the bigger those 8-inch wheels. Those came off 520 seat. Even the fancy 520 heat shield. Without the 20 horsepower. But well, then gauges. The gauges would be nice. I love gauges. But anyway, that's what's involved. It took me all hours told. I don't know, maybe 5, 6. I'm sure if I knew what I was doing, it would have gone quicker. But that was also spread out over 5 days, over a month probably, between 2 jobs and 3 kids and all the other stuff. But it's done, so I'm happy, and I'm happy with the final result. And I kind of made more work for myself with adapting the plow. Goes on that, and then I have a 2-inch receiver for it right there that goes on my plow hitch. So, yep, all done. We'll see how it goes.